Let's right now bring in NBC's Yamiche Alcindor, who's traveling with the president. She's in Las Vegas. Yamiche, welcome to you. You have new reporting on the Trump administration firing multiple inspectors general. What can you tell us?
That's right. President Trump fired at least 12 inspector generals in the federal government, according to a senior administration official. Now, our understanding is that these firings were made because the officials and the White House wants to get rid of officials that don't align with the Trump presidency, is what one source told me. We were told that the Department of Justice, as well as the Department of Homeland Security inspector generals, remain in place, but that the others, a number of others, have been fired. We also are trying to understand the legal justification for this, because right now it remains murky. I was talking to a senior White House official who told me that they believe that these decisions happen with legal counsel looking over them, but they are checking with the White House counsel's office. They also told me that they believe that they did not break the law, that the Trump administration did not break a law in these firings, though, again, that's all being reviewed. But there was a recent law that was passed that said that the White House was supposed to give Congress 30 days notice before firing an inspector general, so there's going to be possibly a fight here, Alex.
Yeah, I would expect so. We know that the president spoke about the confirmation of Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. What did he say, Yamiche?
That's right. Well, as you know, Pete Hegseth was confirmed with a tie-breaking vote from the vice president. President Trump, just hours, or just a few minutes rather, after that vote, reacted. He was celebrating. Take a listen to what he said.
I think Pete is going to be a great Secretary of Defense.
Are you disappointed that McConnell voted no?
I didn't even know that. No, I don't know that. I just heard that we won. Winning is what matters, right?
Just a few hours ago, Pete Hegseth was sworn in. Vice President J.D. Vance actually took a question while that swearing in was going on. A reporter asked, why should women in the armed services trust Pete Hegseth, given the allegations that he has denied, though, but of sexual assault and abuse. The vice president issued a full-throated response. He said all people in armed services should trust him because he looks out for them. He's going to fight for them. He's going to make sure that we have the kind of military that we can all be proud of. So the Trump administration certainly is excited and happy that Pete Hegseth was able to make it through. But we should note that this was only the second time in history that there had to be a tie-breaking vote for a cabinet official, Alex.
And joining me now is Minnesota Representative Angie Craig. She is also the ranking member of the House Agriculture Committee. Representative Craig, I'm glad to see you. Let's get into this, because Republicans claim getting rid of these initiatives will promote merit-based assessment. Is that realistic? And what is the real-world impact?
Well, before I came to Congress, and that was only 6 years ago, it's great to be with you this afternoon. I worked in two healthcare businesses for almost 22 years. And, you know, the point of these programs is really to expand the number of people of underrepresented groups in your community that have access to these positions, qualified people. The irony of eliminating some of these programs, which really only expand the pool of people while having Pete Hegseth be appointed the Secretary of Defense in our country, has been a really astounding week. I think even members of Congress have had to take a bit of a beat this week, take a breath with the flurry of executive orders. And at the end of the day, I hope we all realize that those executive orders and the flurry of them, that is the point of this. What they didn't do at all this week in Congress was anything to lower the cost of groceries or health care or the cost of housing or anything like that. So let's buckle up and get ready to fight.
Mm-hmm. Let me pick up on that, because his many executive actions on day one included reversing several Biden administration actions on health care, like the efforts to lower prescription drug costs for Medicare and Medicaid recipients, enhancing the Affordable Care Act. Experts say most people won't be directly impacted because many initiatives weren't yet implemented. But are you concerned that Trump appears to be taking actions that will hurt rather than help everyday Americans, maybe just because Biden's name was attached to them?
Well, I think that's exactly what's happening. And look, you're talking to a member of Congress who worked with this president when he was president before. He signed 4 of my bills into law. So this isn't a matter of just arbitrarily disagreeing with Donald Trump. We passed a bill that would cap generic drugs for folks who are on Medicare by at $2. We passed bills that would cap the cost of prescription drugs for America's seniors at $2,000 a year. We fixed something called the family glitch, which allowed more Americans access to health insurance. We extended the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Those need to be extended again, or healthcare costs are going to go up. What I note is many of the executive actions this week and much of the rhetoric from the administrations to start at least had nothing to do with lowering cost for Americans. And I am completely focused on this, and I think this is where Democrats have to be focused.
Look, I know that you're also working on final negotiations on the Farm Bill. It got a 1-year extension that was last year. So explain why this bill is important and what it's all about, and is bipartisanship going to get this thing done?
Well, it's the only way it gets done is on a bipartisan basis with a 2-seat majority for 3 months and maybe a couple of new members on the Republican side in a few more months. Republicans simply don't have the votes for a farm bill. In fact, you've got 30 to 50 Republicans who are never going to vote for a farm bill. I think we can get it done if we come together and work across the aisle. I certainly am optimistic and look forward to working with my Republican colleague, G.T. Thompson, who I'll be with on Sunday here at the Farm Bureau panel. So I'm looking forward to working with them, but it's going to be tough. If they come after the nutrition title as part of the budget reconciliation process, not only is that going to take away much needed funding for hungry kids and seniors and veterans, but let's not forget that that program supports the crops that producers grow, and it supports ranchers, it supports the truck drivers that drive the food to the grocery store and the clerks that put it on the shelf. So that program is part of the Farm Bill, and we need to understand that our food supply chain is completely tied to the Farm Bill. And there's all kinds of other things, Alex. Mass deportation is going to lead to
I want to ask you about that, because they are intertwined here. The first efforts of Trump's mass deportation plans, they've been carried out. There are concerns that could impact the farming industry. You have Senator Dick Durbin, who asked Trump's nominee for Secretary of Agriculture about that, citing estimates that up to 40% of farm workers are undocumented. Listen to this.
Can we expect this administration to be raiding farms and going after the immigrant farm workers?
The president's vision of a secure border and a mass deportation at a scale that matters is something I support. My commitment is to work with all of you to work to solve and do everything we can to make sure that none of these farms or dairy producers are put out of business.
But how? How big a concern is this? Will prices go up for Americans if the workforce is depleted? Will farms risk going under without the manpower they rely on?
I think that's the concern within the farm economy right now, is that mass deportation is going to lead to higher prices for American consumers. And let us be clear here. We need to make sure that we have a secure border. I don't think anyone would argue that undocumented immigrants who commit crimes should be deported. But these are people who we rely on in our ag economy. And what my producers say is, many of these people have have overstayed their paperwork. How do we make sure that people who are here, they're working, they're paying taxes, their kids in our schools, keeping our rural communities safe and our schools open? How can we begin to integrate them into our country? Things like reforming the H-2A system so that more of them can be here in a documented fashion. That's what we got to do, Al. Got to secure our borders, but we have to reform this broken immigration system that we're all living under today.
Minnesota Representative Angie Craig, it's good to see you again. Thank you so much.
My administration has taken action to abolish all discriminatory diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. And these are policies that were absolute nonsense throughout the government and the private sector. With the recent yet somewhat unexpected great Supreme Court decision just made, America will once again become a merit-based country.
A merit-based country, right. On his first day back in the Oval Office, Donald Trump signed an executive order ending what he called, quote, radical and wasteful diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in federal agencies. It's unclear how many workers ultimately will be affected, but what is evident is the impact this will have on the government and the country. Trump's actions echo President Woodrow Wilson's then unprecedented segregation of federal offices in 1913. There was no official law, no executive order, just guiding policy. But that policy led to blacks being segregated or just summarily dismissed from federal positions nationwide. For example, in 1914, Wilson required a photo from all federal job applicants to make it easier for racial screening. And those black workers who managed to keep their jobs, they were often subjected to inhumane and degrading treatment. In an open letter to Wilson, W.E.B. Du Bois wrote, quote, "We are told that one colored clerk who could not actually be segregated on account of the nature of his work has consequently had a cage built around him to separate him from his white companions of many years." Take a second to let that sink in. A cage. Wilson later defending his racist policies to a group of black professionals, saying in part, quote, "Segregation is not humiliating, but a benefit and ought to be so regarded by you gentlemen." In 1948, President Harry Truman signed an executive order banning segregation in federal civil service, but the damage was already done and it continues to this day. While more than 18% of federal workers are black, they only comprise 11.7% of management positions, with white employees being twice as likely to be promoted to management in some agencies. The wealth gap between federal black and white workers sits at 15.6%. And as late as February of 2023, about 4 in 10 federal black workers say that they've experienced discrimination or have been treated unfairly at work because of their race or ethnicity. Joining me now is Shaun Harper, professor of public policy, business, and education at the University of Southern California and founder and chief research scientist of the USC Race and Equity Center. Professor, it's an honor to have you here. Look, DEI efforts, they date back to the civil rights movement to create more diverse and inclusive workplaces because of the racist history of this country. And just like in Woodrow Wilson's time, what happens in that federal government is often repeated in the private sector. We've seen recently companies like Target, McDonald's, Walmart, Meta, and others, they're rolling back their DEI initiatives. How much do you think that these collective moves, either publicly in our government sector and privately in our business sector, they're going to set the nation back?
Yeah, well, Katie, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be with you. I also want to appreciate the historical journey that you just took us through. Historical facts matter. It's why it is so important to teach the full truths about America's racial past and present. You know, if people were taught the real truth, they would understand the consequential nature of the policy decisions that are being made right now that are going to lead to catastrophic outcomes and even more pronounced racial inequities and wealth gaps between groups. You know, this is bad for our economy. Equity is good for our economy. When women receive equal pay for equal work, that is good for women and it's good for all of us in the United States. It's good for us when the diversity of our federal leadership and leadership in our military is reflective of the diversity of our nation. So, you know, that's what's at stake here now because of these new executive orders from President Trump.
And Trump's efforts go beyond DEI. On Tuesday, he revoked the Equal Employment Opportunity Rule that was signed by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1965, which stipulates that employers can't discriminate against job applicants or workers on the basis of race, gender, and other protected characteristics. This is a policy that was paid for in blood by the civil rights movement. And in 2023, white people still the majority of federal workers at 59.5%, and men are still outnumbering women 55% to 45%. 74% of senior executive level positions held by white workers. Reversing these initiatives could lead to a huge backslide on progress. But isn't this just the most blatant permission to be able to discriminate?
It sure is. I appreciate that you just laid out those facts, right? Like what you just presented is evidence. And there's a corpus of evidence that's been produced by really credible researchers that show durable and persistent patterns of inequity and discrimination. We're going to see more of that, and it's going to cost the federal government and it's going to cost the private sector. What I mean by that is, as diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are rolled back, we're going to see, unfortunately, higher rates of discrimination, harassment, and abuse in the workplace. And people are going to sue their employers, as they should, for those experiences. That's going to cost us a ton of money that, ultimately could have been saved had we, in fact, continue to invest in the really good protective DEI initiatives.
Professor Shaun Harper, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your insight and your analysis.
A federal judge is putting conditions on some pardoned January 6 defendants, and Donald Trump's Justice Department is pushing back. Yesterday, Judge Ahmed Mehta said several defendants, including Oath Keepers leader Stewart Rhodes, could not enter the U.S. Capitol or even set foot in parts of Washington, D.C. without prior permission. Shortly after, to no one's surprise, the Justice Department asked for that order to be dismissed, arguing that the defendants should not face restrictions since their sentences have been commuted. Former Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn joins us at the table.
So, Harry, I know I can't even begin to put words on this event of this week. I've watched you and your fellow officers sort of talk through this week. And I know it's very difficult because this is perhaps one of the most offensive, disgusting, and in my view, un-American things an American president can do is to embrace the insurrectionists the way he has and to give them carte blanche by saying, not only are you free to go, but, just come on up here to the Capitol anytime. You've got members of Congress already now preparing to invite them. You have Judge Amy Berman Jackson writing this. Those valiant officers who fulfilled their oaths to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, they are the patriots. Patriotism is loyalty to country and loyalty to the Constitution, not loyalty to a single head of state. I just want, and I know you've talked about this week, but just now you're a week into your 4 or 5 days and it's happened. How are you digesting this? How are you seeing this moment? And what is it saying? What is it saying to the men and women who are currently serving in this building?
I'm glad that you aren't able to put into words what's happening. Nobody should be able to wrap their heads around what's happening because that normalizes what's happening. Under no circumstances should we let this be normal, move on from it. Move on, like a lot of Republicans are suggesting, hey, let's move on from it. Also, it's kind of weird. They say they want to move on from it, but Mike Johnson just announced the formation of another January 6th committee to investigate it. I'm glad that he is. Good. Keep on investigating it and show America how bad Donald Trump really was with this. But what it says about the pardons, I mean, it's what we've been saying from day one. It's a slap in the face to the officers. Those officers are the real patriots, are the real heroes. Like the judge said, those are the people that are patriots, the people that honor their oath to this country, that to the Constitution, that are faithful to that and not an individual. Donald Trump told us, he told the world, stand for the Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. And that's exactly what they're doing. He's keeping them on standby in case he needs them again.
The leader of the the former leader of the Proud Boys, who says it is now not proper to call him an ex-Proud Boy, which means he has rejoined the organization. Enrique Tarrio, he is seeking revenge after being pardoned by Trump for his January 6th conviction. Listen, I want to play for folks what he had to say. Listen to this.
There is absolutely nothing I will apologize for, because I did nothing wrong. The Proud Boys did nothing wrong, and American patriots did nothing wrong. We are currently assessing our options on not only who to sue, because there's a lot of people to sue. I want accountability.
When you hear Enrique Tarrio say that they are assessing their options, and I think he put who to sue in there because that legal ramifications, but the Proud Boys are not known for seeking lawsuits. Lawsuits.
Yeah.
What do you feel when you hear that?
I don't like to give people like that attention. America saw him for what he is. I mean, whatever Donald Trump did, I mean, he's a convicted felon, and his charges, his crime, what he did will go down in American history. And, those are the type of people we keep giving attention to. They keep on just nagging in the back, and just put it plainly, forget him. The hell with him. It's time to move on from him.
I get what you're saying. For your safety or other former Capitol Police officers, law enforcement?
I'm not naive. Like, they've already shown what they're capable of doing. So to say I'm not worried about that's not true at all. Everybody's concerned and should be worried. I've taken proper precautions and things like that. But Christopher Wray described those individuals as domestic terrorists. Terrorists' goal is to make people live in fear. If we succumb to live in fear, then they win. And I refuse to let them win. But at the same time, I'm not naive that they are capable of doing crazy, unthinkable things. They've already shown that. But if they're looking for fear, then they won't get it from me.
So I want to play for you a little bit of Donald Trump's thinking, musing on what he did and the impact it has on those rioters who assaulted police officers. This was him on Tuesday with Peter Alexander. Let's take a listen.
You would agree that it's never acceptable to assault a police officer,
Sure.
right? So then if I can, among those you pardoned, DJ Rodriguez, he drove a stun gun into the neck of a D.C. police officer who was abducted by the mob that day. He later confessed on video to the FBI and pleaded guilty for his crimes. Why does he deserve a pardon?
Well, I don't know. Was it a pardon? Because we're looking at commutes and we're looking at pardons. Okay, well, we'll take a look at everything. But I can say this. Murderers today are not even charged.
So we'll let everybody go, and then we'll look to see which one of them are violent offenders, and then do what, Donald Trump? You're going to put them back in custody? You're going to put Enrique Tarrio back in jail? What are you going to do? So that tells you, to your point, a lot about how you have to be vigilant in this process, because there is no real process. This is just all retribution. Yeah. And this is all aggrandizement with insurrectionists that he fomented and sent to the Capitol. When you hear the president say, oh, well, yeah, we'll take a look at the bad guys, the worst of the offenders, now that we've released them all.
Yeah.
Where do you go with this?
But that should have been his answer before he did releasing everybody. You're supposed to look into it before you make a decision.
But they did. Did you love that? When they looked into it, what did he say? The staff was like, oh, it's just way too many. So what did he say?
So we're just going to pardon
everybody. He just said, F it, pardon them all.
And you know what? That's how Donald Trump, not just with January 6th, that's how he's going to govern and run the country. He'll make a decision and then make an excuse for why he did what he did later. He's impulsive. He doesn't think about the ramifications of his actions and with the things that he says. And, you know, it blows my mind that people are shocked about this. And we're oh, my gosh, I can't believe he did it. What do you mean you can't believe he did it? He said he was going to do it. He said he was going to do it. So those people that are shocked, where were you? Have you not been paying attention? I mean, those are the people that I get so angry and frustrated with. Donald Trump, yeah, my anger for him is where it is. But these people, I believe, who think are supposed to know better, who are supposed to be paying attention, like the Senator Tom Tillis and other senators, and they're coming out with their statements like, oh, that's why did you say that was unacceptable before he did it? The Fraternal Order of Police. Why didn't y'all say this is unacceptable before he did it? Why do you have to wait? You endorsed him. He said he was going to do this from day one. So that means you weren't paying attention.
Hey, that's the part, the Fraternal Order of Police right now.
Oof. I will just note, as we let you go, that Amy Berman Jackson, again, we just going to keep repeating her words. It would dishonor those valiant officers who fulfilled their oaths to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They are the patriots. Patriotism is loyal to country and loyalty to the Constitution, not loyalty to a single head of state. You are a patriot, my friend.
Thank you.
Harry Dunn, thank you.
Thank you.
On day one of convicted felon Donald Trump's second term as president, he fulfilled one of his most egregious campaign promises. Trump pardoned virtually all of the 1,500 people who were charged for crimes relating to the January 6th insurrection. That blanket pardon includes the 608 individuals who were charged with assaulting, resisting, or impeding law enforcement officers that day. Trump has defended his decision, calling their sentences ridiculous and excessive, even though over 140 police officers were viciously assaulted that day. The announcement was catnip for his MAGA base, but the pardoning of those convicted of violent crimes has been met with valid and pointed criticism by Republican members of Congress, police unions, and even some of those that are receiving the pardons. That last group includes my next guest, who, despite being charged with entering the Capitol with those rioters, now rejects the pardon that's been issued to her by Trump. Joining me now is Pam Hemphill, who pleaded guilty to the crime of entering the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. Pam, I welcome you to the Katie Phang Show, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk about your experience. I want to remind our viewers, you didn't skate on this. You served 2 months. You served 60 days in jail. You were also sentenced to 3 years of probation and a fine. Now, Trump has offered and has issued a full pardon for you. It would legally clean the slate for you. Why are you saying no?
Oh, no. It would be a slap in the face to the Capitol Police officers, the rule of law, to our nation. I pleaded guilty because I was guilty. It would help their narrative that it was a peaceful protest that day. No, it was not a peaceful protest. It was an insurrection. I don't want a part of anything that Trump is offering.
Pam, you've described yourself as being under the spell of the MAGA Trump cult. For you, what did it take to break that spell?
Actually, it was 2 events. The first one is when, in my mind, I wasn't a victim yet. I went there. I wasn't planning on breaking any laws or harming anybody. That's not me. So I kept that victim feelings going on. And when my therapist looked at me and said, Ms. Hemphill, you're not a victim, you're a volunteer. And I got mad at him. I went home that night and I thought about it. He's right. I've been sober now 45 years, working a 12-step program. And one of the steps says, when you're wrong, promptly admit it. Well, I wasn't properly admitting it. So I did some writing. I did some introspection. And I said, yes, I had no business being there. I broke the law. That's it. That's done with it. The second incident is when Ryan Samsel had put out an article that on the Gateway Pundit that he had lost his whole eye. I researched it, got some information, found out that wasn't true. He did not lose his whole eye. And I went back to my space. It was a J6 space on X, used to be called Twitter, and told the mega group that I'd put together what happened. And they, oh God, they got upset at me. No, it's not true. That's not true. He did lose his eye. And I said, no, I got evidence. But so they ended up putting out a smear campaign against me. And then I started the J6 gaslighting space, and the sedition hunters, researchers, and Democrats came in and started sharing me facts. And I said, this is it. They're lying about everything, everything. And I'm going to push back on their narrative.
Pam, I'm so glad that you brought up the word and you're using the word facts, because the facts and the truth always need to be shared. Although you've written that you speaking out with the facts has come at a great risk to your personal safety and well-being. Why is it so important then that perhaps it's just symbolic for you not to accept this pardon from Donald Trump, but why is it so important for you to just continue to speak out like you're doing today on the show, for that people to understand that the gaslighting of you and others that participated on January 6th is very real, but that the true facts about what happened reveal that there was no big lie, there was no fraud in that stolen election?
I guess because I was lied to and paid the price, 60 days in prison for listening to all the propaganda that was going on out there, not doing any fact checking myself. Hopefully, if there's another Pam out there like myself that is not paying attention to what Trump is putting out there and doing their own research, I know it's difficult because in a cult, you get gaslighted so much. You got to decide for yourself, do you really want to continue listening to Trump and all his lies, or find out if they are lies? Just check it out. Just do some fact checking. One or two things. I don't know about you. When somebody's lied to me, it's not okay with me.
And for your final, quickly, your final message to those that have now celebrated the fact that they've been pardoned. We look at Stuart Rhodes, for example, and we look at others who say, I'm going to go get guns, and I'm celebrating the idea that I've been pardoned. What's your final parting message to them?
Well, I really believe they have been given a green light to go out and be violent. We need to be careful. I'm afraid of any peaceful protest that's going to happen out there. You know, that any protest that goes against Trump's agenda, they will be out there, and they need to be careful and aware that they mean business. They're very dangerous. And I'm sorry that we're going to have to go through this. I just want to say one more quick thing. Just remember what Trump has done, trying to do right now. He's trying to turn the clock back on civil rights. And I think we need to start focusing on that and pushing back.
Well, Pam, something that's important that you have done today and that you're continuing to do, for which I do laud you, is being honest about what you went through, accepting the accountability and the responsibility, which you have done. Frankly, you've done more jail time than some of the people that have been pardoned, and I appreciate your courage for speaking and for being so transparent. Thank you, Pam, for being with me today.